Welcome to our podcast, Inspiring Living with me, Mark Candelaria. I'm an architect, blogger, traveler, chef, father, and husband. I'm the founder and now a partner of a fabulous 25-person architecture firm specializing in high-end residential architecture, designing amazing homes across the country. We have hosted tours to Italy, Spain, and now Napa over the last 20 years, and in the course of all this, I have met a lot of interesting people who truly inspire me. Our podcast is about all the opportunities that are right there in front of us to inspire living. Yes, we will talk about architecture and design, but every week we will venture into all sorts of topics that will inspire you, teach you, and motivate you to inspire living every day. My guests will include a wide gamut of amazing people, from those in the design industry to clients to real estate professionals, chefs, artists, sports figures, and philanthropists, and people who just flat out get it. Sit back and enjoy, and let's have some fun exploring all of the opportunities that are there just waiting for us. Please subscribe and get ready to be inspired every week. Okay, as my dad says, here we go. All right, I've got a really inspiring podcast today. I have been blessed and fortunate enough to meet this man that I'm going to introduce you here in just a little bit. He came to my office, a couple years ago, and him and a couple of his team came and interviewed me in my office and said, how would you like to be on our board at Habitat for Humanity? And I kind of looked at them and I said, are you kidding me? I would be totally honored. And so I've got the president and the CEO of the Central Arizona chapter. He'll straighten me out exactly what it's called, of Habitat for Humanity, Mr. Jason Barlow. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, it's Habitat for Humanity of Central Arizona.
Okay, I had it basically right.
You were there.
Yep, pretty close. So to kind of get back to the story, I have been involved now for about 2 years. I'm not as involved as I'd like to be. I'm on the board, and I do what I can. Obviously, the economy is so dang busy right now, thank God, that I don't have a lot of time. But I am really looking forward to having the time to do more with this organization, because as I've gotten involved with it, I have been so inspired by how organized you guys are, and the job that you do as our president and CEO is absolutely inspiring to me. I consider you a mentor to me, to be honest with you. I look at how you run your meetings, how you run the organization. I'm go, okay, here is a perfect example of a great job in that whole department.
Well, I'm blushing. Your listeners can't see that, obviously, but I'm blushing. Thank you very much. And you have done a tremendous amount of work and been a super engaged board member. And we just can't thank you enough. You've made the connections. I mean, our board is very committed, and I look at every one of our board members as a connector and ambassador, and you're a fantastic ambassador for us. Thank you.
Well, I think it was either last Saturday or the Saturday before. I think it was the Saturday before. We were all downtown Phoenix, and we were doing a little ceremony there. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was an amazing day. That was an epic day where we had what we call a wall signing ceremony, and this is on the first day of construction of a new home with Habitat. Just as the walls are going up, we pause and we take a few minutes to talk about who is sponsoring the home. We give the family a chance to talk about their journey and what's going on with them. And we have obviously lots of volunteers helping us. And then we do what's called a wall signing, and we hand out magic markers to everybody, and they get to put a blessing on the walls, the uprights. And the ceremony you're talking about was a very special home. It's co-sponsored by Jerry and Joan Colangelo,
right?
Fantastic supporters who were at our Blueprints and Blue Jeans event a year or so ago, and he threw out a challenge and quickly raised double that and more, which basically funded that first home in Central City South. And that's where I was just this morning, was down there visiting with folks. And so we had a lot of interesting people there, didn't we?
Yeah, it was great. The senator, state senator, we had the mayor of Phoenix.
Yeah, Mayor Gallego was there. We had the councilman, Garcia. That's his district. So it was
turnout.
It was probably over 125 people, which is huge for those kinds of things for us. But it was a really special day for Habitat, because that was the very first of 30 homes we're building down in that area, and we pledged to renovate another 80 in that same area.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. 30 homes is a lot. That's a whole neighborhood.
Pretty much. These are all spread out, obviously, in a bunch of infill lots. The city of Phoenix has, I mean, the Arizona Republic had a story not too long ago, said there's 5,000 lots the city has. And so it took us some time, and they put out a request for proposal, an RFP, and we competed with some other nonprofits, and we won because the city likes what Habitat does because we bring together people to build homes, communities, and hope.
Right.
And it's the volunteer aspect of it. It's a requirement of our families to participate in the build.
Right. So they're learning skills.
They're learning skills, and it's also the fact that they are paying a mortgage at the end.
Right.
It's not they're not getting the house for free. It's a zero interest mortgage, but it's a mortgage nonetheless.
Yeah.
And when people hear about that, they go, "Oh my goodness, that's pretty cool."
Yep. No, I think it's great. What I've kind of garnered from the whole thing is just how many different groups of people this all connects that would normally not connect at all. They would never connect. And so to be there to hear that family at that, in their speech was really moving. I mean, you could feel it in their soul how proud and how honored they were to have this house.
Right. And every one of our families has amazing stories about their journey to find us, their journey to home ownership. And many of our families are coming out of one-bedroom apartments or one room in a parent's house. We just interviewed a family that there were 5 living in one room, and there was a teenager involved. I mean, it's amazing. And I have a feeling there's many, many more families out there in this Phoenix metro than anybody knows. We know from census data that there's about 150,000 families in Maricopa County living in poverty housing today. And that should just be unacceptable to all of us. But at Habitat, we're trying to do our best to lift some families up one at a time.
Well, and I think the other thing that I find is you're also making people aware of that situation.
That's right.
I think people, they're in their own world. They're living here in Paradise Valley or Scottsdale, and nothing wrong with that. But I think we all kind of get blinded to the reality that's really out there.
Yeah, and the perfect example of that is this neighborhood. We are in basically the shadow of downtown Phoenix. You could be painting on one of these homes or building it and look up, and you're looking up at the skyscrapers, all of those big buildings. In fact, Quicken Loans recently came out to help us. They brought 650 volunteers over 4 days.
Wow.
Fantastic. This is the 4th year we partnered with them. And you can see the top of their building from where we were working.
Oh, see, that's neat.
And that is pretty cool. And across the street, you could see the tops of 2 new Habitat homes that we were building. One of them is the Jerry Coangelo home, sponsored there.
No, and I want to just personally say thank you to Joan and Jerry. They're good friends and clients, and I think what he's done for downtown and continues to do in little projects even like this, I think just makes such a huge difference. So
absolutely. And often you look at the challenge of affordable housing and you just say, I can't help. It's just too big.
Right.
But, you can do what they did, and that's doing one family, it's like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, and so if everybody who's hearing this could just help with something, and it doesn't even need to be with Habitat. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of nonprofits out there that could use your help. If you've got all you need, if you're living the good life like we are, frankly, then I think maybe you could help, too.
Yeah, I think everybody can help. One of my favorite lines is, if everyone just makes a small ripple in the pond, it turns into a tsunami. And so, I think people just realize it doesn't take much. Just do a little bit. A whole bunch of little bits makes a big difference.
That's right. And we had close to 11,000 volunteers work with us last year. Wow. And all of those individually, but all together, as a force, we served almost 1,000 people. Yeah. So it's an amazing effort, and we would be nowhere at Habitat without our volunteers because we have a relatively small staff in the field, and it's just multiplied by these thousands and thousands of volunteers.
Well, and that's the other thing I love about being on the board is seeing how efficiently your organization uses the funds. I mean, I see so little waste, and I see what's being donated and what's being done goes right to those projects. So I commend you for how you do that.
Well, thank you. It's a matter of pride that we spend our donor dollars as efficiently as we can, and that's why we have some ratings by Charity Navigator and GuideStar and the Better Business Bureau that just lend credibility to that.
Right.
And actually, before I started in this position, I really didn't know how important some of those ratings were, but there's actually a lot of donors out there and corporations and churches that look at those ratings to see how efficient
Right.
the charity is operating. And if it has low ratings or
Yep.
they don't want to give.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw a clip the other day on TV of former President Jimmy Carter working.
Yeah.
Did you see that? I'm sure
Yes,
you did.
yeah.
I mean, he fell down. They picked him back up, and he was there working on a drill or something. I mean, he's 92 years old, and
He's 95.
95. Okay.
And he's on a Carter build project. And he got it made the national news.
Yeah.
It was on actually World Habitat Day, which is the first Monday in October. He got up there and he said, "Okay, I've fallen. I got 14 stitches and a black eye, but everybody
right.
get back to work.
Yeah.
We're here to build homes." And he's a machine, that guy. I understand. I've never been with him on a Carter build project. I work with a number of people who have, and they tell me he's the first one on the job every morning and the last one to leave.
Yeah, well, you didn't become president by being lazy. That's for darn sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll get back to Habitat a little bit. I want to know a little bit about you and how you ended up getting even to Habitat. Where are you from, and how did you get to Arizona? Are you born in Arizona? Or
No. I was actually born in Utah, Salt Lake City, and my folks up and moved us to Hawaii. So
wow,
I grew up.
that was a big change from Salt Lake.
It was. I think they were tired of the cold and the snow. And my dad comes home. He's an engineer, and he got a job with a Royal Hawaiian Hotel.
Wow.
The Pink Hotel on the beach in Waikiki. He was the engineer there. And he came home and announced it. And I can still remember it's like one of those significant.
How old were you?
I was like 9.
Okay.
And I can still remember where I was standing in the yard with my goat. And he comes home and announces, "We're moving to Hawaii." And all I could think about was ladies in grass skirts and coconuts.
Wow.
And it was interesting. So I went through elementary school all the way basically up through college in Hawaii.
Oh, you went to college in Hawaii too?
University of Hawaii, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. The rainbows, right?
Right, the rainbows. And I was a meteorology major, which was unusual because the weather's always the same in Hawaii.
Well, that's a good place to study meteorology, I would guess.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. That's where I got into Air Force ROTC.
Okay.
And got commissioned in the Air Force and never have lived in Hawaii since then.
Huh.
Left Hawaii and moved all around and
So in the Air Force ROTC, what were you doing?
that's where I had a 3-year scholarship at the university.
Mm-hmm.
They basically pay your school tuition, books, and a little stipend. And then at the end of that, you're commissioned as a second lieutenant, and you owe them a bunch of years of service.
Okay.
And I ended up becoming a pilot in the Air Force, and I flew for most of my career. And then I actually retired after about 20 years in the Air Force.
I didn't realize that. So 20 years with the Air Force, and then when you retired, where did you go?
Well, we went to.
Were you married at that point?
Yes, yeah, I was married to Jane,
Okay.
the light of my life, my ray of sunshine.
I hear you talk about her all the time.
Yeah, she's I married up, as I like to say, way up, and she's a physician, she's a doctor, and I looked at her. She'd followed me around. We met in the Air Force, and we kind of had this agreement that she would follow me. You can only really honor one career at a time, or you can be miserable, especially when you're in the military. So she followed me around through a couple of moves, and then when I was able to retire, I did, and then I looked at her and I said, "Where are we going?" And so she got a job with IBM as one of their medical officers, and off we went to Research Triangle Park in North Carolina.
Wow.
And then we moved up to New York to their headquarters, and she ended up being a global benefits director for IBM, medical benefits, yeah.
So then what were you doing at that time?
Well, when I got to North Carolina, I was recruited into a telecommunications company of cell phone towers. This is back when cell phone towers are growing like mushrooms, and towns were getting upset with cell towers going everywhere. This is almost before we had the palm trees and the churches and the rooftops. And so I worked for a company called SpectraSite, and what they did is they managed towers for all of the carriers. So it was a kind of a cool idea. They would put a tower in, and you could put up to 6 carriers on a single tower. Yeah, your AT&T, your Nextels. And so that was pretty cool.
So when was this approximately? What year?
Oh, this would have been in 2000 and in the 2000 time frame.
Okay.
2001.
When the iPhones were coming out.
Right.
And all of that stuff.
All of that. Everybody wanted a crystal clear signal. Now, of course, it's accentuated to where we have micro cells, and nobody ever wants to be out of cell phone or Wi-Fi.
We can't function without our cell phones.
Right, you really can't.
Yeah. So I got to North Carolina, New York. Then where did you go?
Well, in New York, Spectre site. I was with the company at 9/11.
Yep.
And actually, after 9/11, if you recall, the economy kind of took a nosedive.
Yep.
People stopped spending money, and we had just spent $3 billion on an acquisition, and the company ended up going bankrupt.
Wow.
And was acquired by another company, another telecommunications company. And so I was looking for work in New York, and I got a position with the Department of Homeland Security right after it formed. And I was one of those first TSA, those people everybody hates.
Oh, the TSA. So there is actually a TSA person.
Yeah, you can blame me. So I was in the wild woolly days of the TSA, where I was a screening manager. We were standing up the operation at Westchester Airport, County Airport. Many of you fly through there because it's just north of the city.
Yep.
It's a great airport. And we were just hiring pretty much everybody we could for screeners. And I remember writing manuals from scratch about personnel, screening, and all of this stuff, and sending it back to Washington where it was being incorporated. And I remember we needed rubber gloves and alcohol to do our job. And they gave us a deadline. They said, you will stand up 24/7 screening operations on this day. And I remember going to Sam's Club to buy alcohol and rubber gloves. And then down the road, they never reimbursed me for it because they said it's a government. You can't buy stuff from a club like that as a government contract. And I'm all like, so I ended up sucking up whatever it was, $300. But it was my contribution to the early days of security screening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So the TSA or the Homeland Security. How did you end up here in Arizona?
Well, there's another job I had in there. So my wife, I've been with the TSA for a couple years, and things were stabilizing. And my wife saw an ad for a vice president at a local hospital. And she said, you ought to apply for that. And I said, I can't even spell hospital. And that's when I realized I should have paid more attention to my wife on her medical side. So anyway, I interviewed with them, and I think I had 14 interviews. It was a hospital. It was St. Francis Hospital and Health Centers in Poughkeepsie, New York, and the Sisters of St. Francis ran it.
Wow.
And they ended up hiring me as a vice president of support services. I was there for 9 years and worked my way kind of up through executive vice president, ended up being the CEO for the last 6 months that I was there. And it was fascinating. I love the family feel. Every morning, like a lot of the jobs I've been in, every morning you got up and it was something important to do.
Right.
And
it was always different.
It was always different. We were the poor hospital in the town. There was another hospital down the street. And it was just fun. Amazing people, the heart of those people, just like the heart of the people that work for Habitat, just like the heart I saw in the military and the TSA.
We were just talking about that in our staff meeting this morning. I said, all the things that we do, it all comes down to the people that are doing it.
That's it.
Totally,
that really
right?
Is it, yeah.
I mean, if you have the good values and everyone's got the same drive and the same goal and you're all on board, it makes the world a difference.
It does.
Yep.
It does. So we were in New York for 11 years,
okay.
And we were just getting tired of that environment, the taxes, the weather, and so there was an opportunity for my wife to move out, and she rattled off a number of towns: Detroit, I think Chicago, Kansas City, and Scottsdale. And it took me like a nanosecond to say, let's go to Scottsdale. So she
probably no coconuts or palm trees, but
No.
we got some palm trees.
No, she took a job with CVS Health.
Okay.
And so we moved out here, and I was retired essentially. I was on several boards, but I was working on the house.
So what year was this?
This would have been 7 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was basically the GC on my house. We bought an older home. We were fixing it up. So I did that, played golf, and then knew I was too young to retire. My wife and I were driving across country to get out here. She said, what do you want to do in your next job? And I said, I want to work for a nonprofit that's really giving back to the community. Awesome. So about 2 years into that, a headhunter called, and out of the blue, out of the total blue, didn't even know the position was available, and said, "Are you interested in working with Habitat for Humanity?" And I said, "Huh."
There it
Let me
is.
think. There it is. I said, this is what I knew about Habitat. They give away their homes, and Jimmy Carter was the founder.
Yeah, that's about what I knew when you came to me.
Neither of those are true. But I said, sure. So I threw my hat in the ring.
Yeah.
And I think the nominating committee of the board was just interested in maybe somebody with new ideas.
Right.
So here I am, and it's been a real blessing. It's a delightful mission to be with.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Like I said, I just love following you and learning from you, and I think it's just great. So you were also an Eagle Scout, I understand.
Yeah, I was. Once an Eagle, always an Eagle.
There you go.
Yeah, I was in Boy Scouts for, I haven't taken it up here, but I was in for 42 years.
Right.
All the way from a boy. I was a scoutmaster in probably 4 troops. But as I moved around in the military, I never let my membership lapse. I think it's a fantastic program for young people.
Right.
And I ended up being council president, then I was an area president.
So you've always been meant to be a leader.
I was on the national council, so it's been that was an amazing experience too.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us a little bit about Habitat for Humanity. I mean, we'll jump back to that again. I mean, you ended up being on the CEO or the president, right? Right out of the gate. Is that correct, or
Right.
did you move up?
No, they hired me for that. Yeah.
So, what do you find that's challenging with Habitat right now? What are some of the opportunities?
Well, I think the challenges are kind of the way we started. There's a lot of folks that need affordable housing here in Arizona.
Right.
There's a lot, but I think the opportunities are there's a lot of people that want to help.
Right, and that's what I hear. Just
yeah.
so you know, I'll post something like Saturday's event, and people go, "Oh, I want to get involved. I want to get involved." I said, "Just send me an email, and I'll forward it to them. They'll find something for you to do."
Oh yeah.
So
there's plenty to do, and
to do.
Just like we talked about before, many hands make for light work, and we have positions, from the board on down. All the board are volunteers.
Right.
We have office angels, people that come in and help us in the office. We have Restore, which is our retail. We could talk about that a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah.
We have all kinds of opportunities for volunteers. Not the least of which to say is you can come out and build a home,
Right.
or renovate a home.
Right.
And so there's
I
amazing.
just donated a car this last week.
Yeah,
so.
thank you for that. You can. Habitat will take your cars too. It's
Yep.
a lot of people don't know about that, but we will. And it's pretty painless, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it was easy. I mean, we just basically call. They pick it up. They take it to an auction, I guess. They sell it, and the funds go to Habitat.
right.
And I get a tax deduction.
That's right. And we have gotten a considerable amount of money over the years from the Cars for Homes program. If you go to the website, habitatcaz.org, you can click on the car donation
Awesome.
tab and do that if you like.
And then we got a new license plate, I think, also, right?
Oh, yeah, that's super cool. We've Governor Ducey a couple months back signed in the Affordable Housing Specialty Plate. It was actually a bill. It was passed by both sides of the Arizona government legislature, and it's going to be a beautiful kind of a sky blue turquoise plate with a Habitat logo. It says Habitat for Humanity across the bottom. And the cool thing is that $17 of every plate that is sold not only is advertising for Habitat and bringing up awareness of affordable housing, but $17 comes back to our mission, our charity, and then we will split that with the other Habitat affiliates in the state because it is a state plate. It's not just a Maricopa County
Right.
plate. So there are 10 other affiliates in Arizona. We're, of course, the largest. Tucson is about a fifth the size of us. And then you have smaller affiliates in Yuma, Bullhead City, Flagstaff, Sedona, Williams.
Yeah.
And they're all doing amazing things.
That's great. So obviously, this retirement plan hasn't worked out so well for you. You seem quite busy. How do you manage everything? I mean, you're obviously very busy with Habitat, and then how do you blend that with your time with your family, your wife?
Well, I don't know that anybody retires anymore. It seems like, and even the people in my own neighborhood up in North Scottsdale that are retired, quote unquote, are busier than they were when they were working. And I think that's the
great.
case.
That's the
I
key,
think
don't you
that's
think?
the key. I
I
think
do too.
staying active is the key to a long, fulfilled life.
Yep.
And I heard actually Joe Genovese, one of our fantastic House leaders, board member, he when I ask him if he was retired, he says, "No, I'm rewired."
Rewired.
I like that so much. I'm using that now. I'm not going to retire. I'm going to rewire myself into something else. I mean, how can you just sit around? I mean, you can only play so much golf. I mean, golf is fun, etc. But there's so many places you can put your talent and your time, and even your treasure into in your rewired years.
Right. So I know you and your wife, though, do have a lot of fun. I know I know the two of you love to travel.
We do.
I think now that I heard your story with the Air Force and everything, I think that was just instilled in you, going from Utah to Hawaii. I mean, who would not want to start traveling after that experience?
Right. I didn't mention, this was my 18th move in 30 years out here.
I'm right there. I'm pretty close to you.
And so I tell people I drew a line in the sand around our house. And I said, "This is it. We can travel, but I don't want to move anymore. Moving's a pain." But, But yes, we've been around, and we really enjoy traveling and seeing the world.
So, what are some of your recent trips? You've done some great trips.
Well, I think one of the transformational trips, it's been a few years now, was a safari to Kenya. And we did it through our association with the Desert Botanical Gardens. I'm a trustee at the garden.
That's another great organization.
Oh yeah, it's if you haven't been to the Desert Botanical Gardens,
awesome.
Here's a plug. Go down there. My aunt, who's 99, who lives in Litchfield Park, she said, "I was at the Desert Botanical Gardens in 1985," and I said, "Aunt Babe, you got to go down there and see this again. You will not recognize it."
I would suggest going at twilight.
Yes.
When the lights come on, and it's just magical.
It's magical. But anyway, through that relationship, we took a safari to Kenya, and it was I mean, absolutely fantastic. Have you been on safaris?
Nope.
This was a photographic safari, of course, and we visited 3 different camps in Kenya, and we were on the Mara at the height of the migration. You've seen the
videos,
National Geographic. We saw the zebras and the wildebeest come down to the river with the crocodiles in them, and they all kind of figure who's going to jump in first, and finally one of them's brave enough, just like it was in the video.
Yep.
We saw that. We took our first hot air balloon ride. It was amazing. We got up over the Mara and probably cruised for 40 minutes, and all you could see 360 were, I think they said, 500,000 to 1 million wildebeest and zebras.
Wow.
And what was really cool is we went up in altitude, there were circles on the ground. Every now and then there were circles, and we asked the balloon pilot, and she said that's where a predator is.
Wow.
That's where a lion or a leopard is sitting.
So they have their radar.
Yeah, they go around them. You know, maybe they're at a kill already, or they're just resting. But in the migration, they go around these animals. It was totally amazing.
Wow.
Totally.
And to have that perspective from the air, I guess that's really unique.
It was a really cool
that's
trip.
Cool. So where else? Where else have you been?
Well, with Habitat, I've actually had some really cool trips with Habitat. We have actually, I probably didn't mention this, there are 1,200 affiliates in the United States, but there's 70 overseas. And they're not called affiliates, they're national organizations over there. So I've taken a few trips with Habitat International, which is the mothership, if you please.
Right.
And they actually look for executive directors and CEOs to go with them on these smaller trips out to kind of do due diligence and validate what's going on. Okay, is the money being spent?
Train
them.
Inspire them.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I got to go to Nepal.
Wow.
Kathmandu.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you talking about that.
Kathmandu, and see the operation there. Everything from, they had the big earthquake there a few years back. Everything from rebuilding an entire village. They built there were 98 homes in this little village, and they rebuilt 90 of them. All Habitat built. They have a bamboo factory in the far east side of the country where they're growing bamboo because that's one of the easiest materials to build with.
Yep.
That was a cool trip. The other one I took was to Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast of Africa.
Wow.
There was another mission there. And we went out to villages out in, the outback, out on, 4 hours on a dirt road out to get to some of these villages. We were told we were the first white people many of the kids under, say, 12 had ever seen, white people.
Wow.
And Habitat there is, I was just amazed. I mean, here it is, think about the day and age we live in with cell phones and technology. Habitat is teaching these villagers to wash their hands and to use bathrooms and helping them with latrines and digging wells.
Right.
And it was just an amazing thing to see.
All the things we take for granted.
All the things we take for granted, these little... But I'll tell you what, I've never been so amazed at the smiles and appreciation. There's a picture somebody took of me. I look like the Pied Piper. I'm walking down this dusty road. I must have 20 kids off of each of my hands. Everywhere I
think
went.
I've seen that, one of those pictures.
Everywhere I went, the children would just follow you.
Right.
And they wanted to touch we had a couple of blonde-haired ladies.
Yeah.
They wanted to touch their
that
hair. It was amazing. And they were so grateful for what was going on.
And happy.
And they're so happy.
Yeah, and that's what I've been trying to tell people, too, a lot is, I think in America, we get so caught up in our consumerism, and I get it. It drives our economy and all that. I'm not saying don't go buy anything now, but, I don't think a lot of people realize that that's not where you get your happiness. You're not going to get your happy. You can buy a car, yeah, you're happy, but you see these kids that have no cars, no bathrooms, nothing, and they're pretty darn happy. I mean, they probably want more, like everybody else, but I just think that happiness comes from another place. It doesn't come from the things you buy or own or have.
It certainly does. It was my first exposure to these huge cargo containers of clothing that were just dumped on the side of the roads on the way to some of these villages. Yeah. And people would come by and for just a few pennies pick out whatever would fit them. And one of these kids that came up to me had a pair of Santa Claus pants on.
He was happy.
He was happy, but I mean, he didn't even know what Santa Claus was. But he had the red velvet with the white fur on the bottom, and they were as dirty as could be.
Oh my gosh.
But he was so happy with those pants and the number of different clothing and outfits you see on the kids. Some of them pretty high end,
right?
From Europe, Spain, all over the place. And they were just happy to have clothes.
Right, exactly. So another thing, I know you like to travel. I know you like to play golf, right?
Right, yeah.
But I know you like to cook also.
Oh, we love to cook. And we love to eat, too. You could tell by looking at me.
Well, I think you kind of look like twins.
We love to eat.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you like? How did you get into cooking?
Well, I tell you, my mom was a fantastic... My mom is a fantastic cook. She's 92, and she still lives by herself in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And still does her own cooking.
Good for her.
And then I married a fantastic cook.
Yeah,
Jane
helps.
is just phenomenal.
Like Isabel. Isabel's a great cook, too.
Phenomenal cook. And then we actually, at the hospital job that I had, we had a thing called Taste of the Hudson. And that is where they brought in about 100 different restaurants, and they would do a food pairing with wine. And that was amazing. We did it every year. It was one of our most successful fundraisers. Well, one of those silent auctions was a cooking school in France, in Lyons.
Nice.
By a chef named Liddy Marshall. She's written a bunch of cooking, easy cooking or slow cooking, a bunch of really cool French cookbooks. And she has this little villa on the top of a mountain, used to be a former fortress that she's converted into her home. The old place where they stored the guns. What am I thinking of?
Like armory.
The armory was the wine cellar.
Oh, that's cool.
And she runs a cooking school.
Awesome.
And so we bid on this. Jane and I won it. We went over for a week. And it turns out only one other couple were with us.
Oh,
so two couples for a week with her. And it was an amazing thing to see. They have this huge place and more Mavier copper cooking pots in the kitchen than I've ever seen in my life. And she had the refrigerator like a dorm room fridge.
Yeah.
So everything is fresh.
Yep.
So every morning, you know this, every morning we'd go out. This is the way we did it. Every morning we'd go out to a market. We'd buy stuff. We'd tour Olive Gardens, vineyards. We would come back. Maybe a little siesta. Then that evening we would prepare dinner from one of her menus or recipes.
From the things you'd gathered that day.
From the things, the food, the fish, whatever it was we gathered. And then we'd sit down and eat it with plenty of wine, of course.
Of course.
Have to have the red wine there. And it was absolutely an amazing farm-to-table event.
There's nothing quite like that, I don't think.
No. And we have Xeroxed copies of her recipes. And we hosted a Mediterranean dinner, and we served recipes from that experience.
Right, and I think there's something on the calendar where you and I are going to be cooking together for somebody.
Yes, absolutely. We auctioned off. Mark and I auctioned off at our last fundraiser dinner for 6. And it's going to be a fantastic evening.
I think we're doing the food and the wine pairing, correct?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And now, why do you like to cook? Let me ask you that, because I'm just curious what your answer is. Does it
like,
take your mind off things?
Yes,
That's why I like it. It's meditative for me. People
Yeah.
go, God, it's so much work. I said, well, yeah, it's work, but it just takes my mind off things. I love preparing the food. I love seeing the joy when you serve somebody. I tell people when we do a house, the house takes 3 years. To get that same accolade you're going to get in 3 hours from cooking dinner for somebody.
Well, I think that's exactly right. In fact, last night we got home, we're tired, yet that's the perfect time for Jane and us to connect in the kitchen.
Yep.
As we prepared, we had a pasta dish, homemade pasta, and tomatoes from the garden, and as much basil, rosemary, everything we can.
Simple, but
simple,
fresh,
but perfect and fresh. And so we're able to cook and talk about our day and then enjoy a good meal.
Yeah, that's the key to success, in my opinion. That's one of the big things that we focus on our Italy tour is we get those farmhouses. That's the moment when people bond the most, is that experience. So I think there's something definitely to all of that. Okay, so we've done some cooking, we've done some traveling. What's your daily routine? I mean, what do you do to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself fit, and how do you do it? Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah, we like to exercise. We'll walk or get on the treadmill or the elliptical 3 days a week in the morning, and then the other days we stretch.
Yeah, stretching. And see, my 92-year-old barber guy, he says that's been my key, is I stretch. Yeah. I do a lot of stretching.
Yeah, I think as you age, it really helps to stretch.
Yeah.
It seems dumb at first, but I'll tell you, you will feel so much better. And there's so many videos you can watch, or you could just throw the mat out, which I do in front of the TV on the floor, and just stretch.
Do it while you're watching.
Or you can go to a gym, of course, and get some one-on-one trainers, etc. But it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then really, it's engaging with people that keep me motivated and going.
Yeah.
We talked about it, every day there's something new. And when you're constantly around amazing people with such a passion and heart for the mission, it's difficult to get down or tired.
Yeah.
It really is difficult.
Yeah, no, that's a real good point. And I keep trying to preach that to people. I said, figure out the people in your life that are your downers, that are negative, that are telling you can't do something, and get away from them as fast as you can because they'll destroy you. And you get around people that are positive, tell you why things can be done. I always tell my kids, you're not Candelarias, you're Candelarias.
That's exactly right.
But it makes a difference, doesn't it?
I've met many of your staff, and they are all kind of reflections of you, which is perfect. They're motivated, they're happy, they're excited about what they're doing.
Totally.
And if you love your job, you never work a day in your life. That's
exactly
an old, overused adage, but it's so true.
It's very true. And it's what I see is the energy that's generated spreads. It spreads, and the reverse. When you're around negativity, that spreads just the other way. It's like wavelengths.
It really does. And it's funny. I actually, some days, I'll go in and I'm just tired, and I'll just kind of mope, and somebody what's wrong? They always want to come up, what's wrong with you, Jason? And then you got to pick it back up.
Right.
Because you can't afford to mope.
Moping doesn't get you anywhere.
Doesn't do anything for you.
Okay, so that's a good segue into what do you attribute to your success in your life?
Well, I think a couple things. I would say don't take yourself too seriously. An attitude. In fact, I just gave an interview to a young man. He's 18. He's, the whole world's his oyster.
Right.
He's picking colleges and all of this stuff. And he asked me the same question. I said, it's attitude. I think, you can be evaluated on your knowledge, your skill, and your attitude.
Yep.
My theory has always been, if you have a great attitude, you will always succeed. And there are so many people you run across in life that have more knowledge and more skill than you, but have a bad attitude.
Right.
And I mean, just like we talked about, it's a downer, isn't it?
Yep. No, and it's really become the focus of when we interview someone to work for our company. Everyone's, when you hire someone, you're always saying, can they do CAD? Can they do this? Can they do that? And what we found, there's plenty of people that can do all the things that you need to get done, the skills. But if they don't have the attitude, they are not going to succeed. And we see it over and over. And we've just realized we got to flip it around. Let's hire for attitude first. We can teach them the skills, but you can't teach the attitude. You usually it's like an athlete. You either have speed or you don't.
Right.
And so I tell people, find good people that have a right attitude or positive. We can do something with that.
I think I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, when I first got to Habitat and I was looking at the people we were hiring, I had our director of construction say he can teach the skills. He needs the people person
Yep.
because we want to make it for every volunteer experience. It has to be like a Disneyland experience.
Yep.
You don't ever want anybody to leave a habitat site that hasn't had a wonderful time. And 99.9% of the time, that's the case.
It's the people.
It's the people that make that happen.
Yeah.
And so we are constantly looking for folks that have people in mind
Yep.
and that great attitude
Totally.
to share.
So in terms of you share, so the attitude to me is a real key to success. I mean, you're obviously your attitude is infectious. I'm sitting here, I'm just getting more and more fired up, which I love. I mean, I thrive off of that.
Well, you have to be willing to try new things too.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to try new things, and I am constantly kind of pushing the envelope. What can we do here? How can we improve this? I used to have an old friend that said 5 minutes of concentration a day can make this a better world. We tend to just be
Right.
in our little boxes,
Yep.
doing our little things. We need to step outside them and look back and say, wow.
Right. There's a whole world out there, and we're always, like you said, we're in this
There
little
is.
walnut shell.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, how come nothing ever happens in my life? I said, well, because you're not doing anything. You got to get out there and do things.
Got to get out
And
there.
people say, well, what's going to happen? He said, get out there and see. You'll be amazed just a little bit. All of a sudden, you start connecting dots. You're involved with this. That trickles to that. Nothing happens to people that just sit on the couch.
Right.
You know.
And that's one of the things that amazes me and I find so fulfilling about travel is you get to see what a big world it is.
Yeah.
But then, I'm sure you agree with me, when you come back here to the United States, it really sinks in how blessed we are and how lucky we have it.
Especially Arizona.
I know.
I mean, I think we live in one of the nicest, easiest spots to get around. It's beautiful. So I totally agree. That's one
amazing.
thing we talk about all the time on our trips is, Italy's great and France is great and Spain is great and we love them. But I'll tell you, you come back here and it is so nice. And there's so many opportunities to even make it better. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think you hit it pretty good in terms of what you would tell someone that's just starting their career to, how they can succeed. And I think that attitude thing is a big, big deal. And I think for someone in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, what would you tell them to be doing? And you kind of said it earlier in the interview.
Well, I just heard about this, Jerry Coangelo at that wall signing ceremony. I asked him about because I guess he spent some time in Carmel, and I asked him about Clint Eastwood.
Right.
And he's a friend of Clint Eastwood. Yeah. And Toby Keith, the country music star,
one of my favorites,
was with Jerry and Clint Eastwood. And apparently Toby asked Clint, he said, how can you're like, I don't know, he's older. How do you stay so fit and engaged? And Clint Eastwood said, don't let the old man in.
There you go, right?
And I got to thinking about that. And then Jerry said, Toby went back and wrote a song, Don't Let the Old Man In, which is the theme song for The Mule.
Yeah.
The late, I don't know if it's the latest Clint Eastwood movie, but you can ask Amazon, or not Amazon,
Netflix.
Alexa to play
Alexa.
Don't Let the Old Man In, and you can hear the song. And I thought, that is so true. You can't let the old man or the old gal in.
Well, it comes back to attitude,
Bingo.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, I think a lot of us use that as an excuse. I think we're saying, well, I'm old, and it's all up here. It's all in your brain. It's all in your mind. I find I'm doing more now at almost 60 than I was doing when I was 30 or 40.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next 10 years. I'm like,
know.
man, there's so much to do.
So much to do. I just heard a vitamin commercial, and this guy they have on, he says, I'm 42 and I'm an old man. And I'm all like, wow, that guy's in tough shape. If you think he's an old man at 42.
Yeah, he's got some problems. Okay, so I think we've covered quite a bit of ground here. Is there anything else that you want to mention about you, about Habitat, some of the things going on?
Well, I would just say that there are, like I said, dozens of ways to get involved with Habitat. And I'll put a plug in for another charity we partner with, is Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And this project we were just doing this morning with Quicken Loans, they're going to build a total of 100 beds.
Wow.
Bunk beds, so that's 200 children that won't be sleeping on the floor when those are delivered.
Yeah.
And they have a neat slogan. It says, no child sleeps on the floor in this town.
That's awesome.
And Joe Genovese is the founder, or he started the local chapter of Sleep at Emily Peace. So we partnered with him because our vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live.
Sure.
And you can't think about a home without a bed, really, can you?
No.
And so there's such camaraderie and partnership between the two of us. And there's so many ways for people to get involved.
Yep.
And I would tell you, you can, if you're really interested, if you're hearing this, you can go to our website, habitatcaz.org. That's Habitat for Central Arizona, caz.org. Or send me an email personally at jbarlow@habitatcaz.org. jbarlow.
That's perfect.
And we would love to get you engaged. There's so many ways to connect. There's so many ways to help and give back.
Yep.
And we need more people to help.
Right. And our podcast tends to be listened to, at least so far, to a lot of people in the building and construction industry. And like I said, I hear it all the time. How can I get involved? What can I do? What can I do? And it's easy. Make a phone call. Send Jason an email. Send me an email. We'll get you involved immediately. And you will thank us immensely as soon as you do. I mean, you'll come back and go, that was the best email I ever wrote and got me involved in this, and I love it. So.
Yeah. I hear from so many volunteers and sponsors that say, wait a second, don't thank me. I'm getting way more out of this than I'm giving you.
Totally.
And that's just, when I hear that, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I've been saying a lot is, I think people don't realize what you get when you give. I think everyone's always asking, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And there's so much that you will get by giving first. And I just think more people need to realize that. Get out there and make something happen. Do something for somebody every day, and you will be blown away at how much comes back to you that you never even expected. So get out there and make it happen, okay? Yeah. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. I love talking to you. I want to have you back sometime. Maybe we'll do what I think would be fun is maybe we do a live podcast at one of the events and get the homeowners on the show and really make it an interactive session.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. And thank you, Mark, for doing this and for letting me have a little pulpit to talk about what I love, Habitat, and the concern we have for our neighbors that live right around us.
They're our neighbors. That's exactly the way to look at it.
And Habitat's, one of its mottos is we're a hand up, not a hand out.
Right.
Because we always ask for sweat equity or a small payment. That's why our homeowners are in their homes over 20 years.
They have pride. They have a story.
They do have a story. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. All right. That was awesome. Thank you, Jason Barlow. I appreciate your time today on the podcast. And I'll tell you what, you guys, get out there, get involved. This is an organization that you can and will make a huge difference. Reach out to us. We'll get you connected. You will love it. Absolutely love it. So thanks again, and stay tuned next week for another fantastic podcast of Inspiring Living. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. We encourage you to write a review, screenshot it, and share it with your friends. Please instant message it to me and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights to Inspiring Living next week.